This episode is sponsored by Gear Focus, an easy online platform to buy and sell used gear. More on them in just a sec. Okay, so before we get to your questions, let's go ahead and talk about the camera just for a little bit. It is very similar to the rest of the full frame Sony Alpha line, except the grip is much bigger and it actually feels more like a DSLR. And so, I don't know, I kind of feel like it just feels more comfortable to hold. Unlike the A7 III and A7R III, it doesn't feel like I'm gonna drop the camera. Without getting too much into the details, just overall ergonomics and design is just much better and a lot more user-friendly. Like for example, the joystick in the back, it's just easier to maneuver versus that little tiny joystick on the A7 III. Most of the button layouts are essentially the same, except there's a locking mechanisms for the exposure and the modes on the top. That's actually kind of helpful because sometimes I knock the exposure dial on accident, but if it's locked, then I can't, accidentally bump the exposure, and so that's handy. Another notable difference between the A7R IV and the rest of the full frame Sony Alpha line is the SD card slot. You don't have that cheap door that you have to like push the switch and it unlocks. It's very similar to Canon's where you have to actually move the actual compartment door, and there you'll find the SD card slots. And of course it's weather sealed. There's like a little barrier to make sure that the SD cards are protected, so that's cool. I don't know if you can see it here, but for those of you that have owned the A7 III and the A7R III, the port doors are very flimsy and easily breakable, where with the A7R IV, they're actually a little more robust and sturdy. And other than those differences, the A7R IV and the A7R III and even A7 III are essentially the same camera, which is why I don't think you should get the A7R IV. But if your focus is mainly photography, then video, then maybe you should probably consider getting the A7R IV so that you can take advantage of those 61 megapixels. Now, is 61 megapixels absolutely necessary for photos? Well, that depends. If you shoot a lot of prints with clients or maybe commercial work, then the A7R IV would actually be a really good camera to have. With all those megapixels, it's very comparable to using a medium format camera like the Hasselblad XCD H6D. Now, this is still a full frame camera and not a medium format camera, but it's still a pretty good option for photographers, I think, especially for those that also shoot video. Now, with all those megapixels, there might be a slight downside when it comes to video. Usually with the high megapixel sensor like the Sony A7R IV, the low light sensitivity isn't so good when it comes to video. I have no idea, and so I'm gonna test it out right now comparing the A7R IV against the A7 III. Now, for the most part, they pretty much perform the same in that low light sensitivity test, but if I had to pick a winner, I'd probably give it to the A7 III. The A7 III just has a really good balance of having high quality video capabilities and also really good photography capabilities. 24 megapixels is totally fine, especially for a content creator like myself. I don't see myself doing a lot of big prints, and so there's no need for me to have a camera like this. But I think I favor a camera like the A7 III because it's kind of split down the middle. It's really good in photos and really good in video. Now that was just the low light test, and the only thing that I really wanted to see for myself when comparing the A7R IV with the A7 III is the image quality. Does the 61 megapixels actually make a difference in terms of image quality and sharpness? I don't know, but we're gonna find out. Okay, so as far as that test goes, I'm gonna have to give it to the A7R IV. I mean, the 61 megapixels does make a difference. It just simply delivers better image quality when it comes to photos. Now, if it was just an ordinary person comparing both photos side by side, chances are you won't be able to tell the difference. But if you're printing something, maybe printing something large like a poster, and in your image you have to crop in Lightroom, then you might be able to tell the difference between the A7 III and the A7R IV because of all those megapixels. And even though cropping in on an image to take advantage of the 61 megapixels is very, very useful, I mean, most photographers aim to shoot the picture right in camera. They don't really often have to crop in Lightroom all that much, but I am gonna play devil's advocate and favor the A7R IV as a better photography camera because those 61 megapixels can come in pretty handy. And those were really the only tests I wanted to see for myself. As far as the other features, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't really care. It's just that the things that actually matter to me when it comes to gear is that the ease of usability and end result. All right, let's take a break to thank today's sponsor, Gear Focus. So Gear Focus is an online marketplace to buy and sell used gear. Once you've set up your account with Gear Focus, you can simply start selling. Make sure to take photos of the product that you want to sell, which honestly I think is the hardest part about the whole thing. And once you're done, upload those photos to the Gear Focus website, write down the exact gear that you want to sell, the description, how much you want to sell it for, where you're able to sell it to. And once all the info is there, your gear is listed to sell. And since signing up with Gear Focus, I've managed to easily sell some of my used gear. Sold them for a fair price, and all my customers have been really happy, which makes me happy, and a little bit of money. In fact, if you want to check out my store and see some of the used gear that I'm selling, then by all means, check out the link in the description below. But a super easy process and definitely much safer than when you're selling or buying gear on Facebook or Craigslist, because that can get creepy. But wait a minute, Sid, there's eBay. I can just sell my gear on eBay. Yes, that's true, but eBay charges you a 10% processing fee, where Gear Focus only charges you 3.5%, so do the math. But honestly, it is such a great platform if you do want to sell used gear or buy used gear. They're also hosting a short film contest that's due at the end of the month, where you get a chance to win Peter McKinnon's backpack plus $2,000 worth in prizes. So definitely check that out. So if you want to check out Gear Focus, then make sure to click the link in the description below. And thanks, Gear Focus, for sponsoring this episode. All right, moving on to your questions, because I know you have some, so let's answer your questions. Okay, first question is, when does the A7S III come out? Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Wrong video, yo. Actually, I have no idea when it's gonna come out. Next question is, who would find it a good upgrade? Use a couple older models and summarize what makes it worth upgrading. I mean, it's a good upgrade, and if money wasn't an issue, then I definitely would pick up the Sony A7R IV, but the Sony A7 III has gone down significantly and is such a good price. And you can even find a used A7 III camera body for like maybe $1,500, which is a really good price for a full frame 4K camera. Even the A7R III has gone down in price, and so if you are looking for a high megapixel camera that's somewhat affordable, then I would just get the A7R III. And with those cameras being at their low price, you can use the money that you could have bought with the A7R IV and pick up a really good lens or a mic or some other accessory. But if money was not an issue, then yeah, I'd definitely pick up the A7R IV. Okay, next question is, besides the megapixels, what separates it from the other Sony cameras like the A7 III? That's a good question. Well, the ergonomics, I would say. I mean, it's just better to hold. I quite like the ergonomics of the A7R IV. Again, it doesn't feel like I'm gonna drop the camera, especially if I have like a heavy lens in front. And so other than the ergonomics, I think the 61 megapixels is probably its main selling point. And with that said, I think this camera is catered towards specific creators. Some line of work that might require all those 61 megapixels. And so, but for the average Joe, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it, to be honest. Next question is, what is the one new feature it has that would justify purchasing it over other cameras? Well, again, like I said before, the 61 megapixels, and I don't know, guys. I'm really digging the grip. It just feels so good in the hands, you know. So I don't know. So I don't think that answers your question. So I'm gonna skip it. Next question is the video eye tracking focus good? Oh, totally forgot about that. Yes, okay, so that is a huge selling point where it has eye autofocus tracking in video. That's huge. That's actually really helpful because your camera is able to focus in on the subject's eyes versus having to rely on face detection and contrast and phase detection. The A7R IV and the A6400 has eye autofocus tracking, which is incredible for shoots like weddings or live events. Totally forgot about that. Thanks for the question. There you go. And the last question is it worth selling an A7R III and getting the A7R IV? Well, that's going to be dependent on you. If you are totally happy with your camera, your Sony A7R III, then just keep it. It's still a fantastic camera and will probably be very useful for the next few years, because who knows when the A7S III will come out. But if you do have the A7R III, just keep it, unless you want another body, in which case, yeah, sure, why not? Get the A7R IV. And even if you have the A7 III and you're happy with it, then keep it. Unless, of course, you see yourself working in projects that require those 61 megapixels and you have the money, then sure, upgrade, why not? But I'm just gonna assume that everyone watching is pretty similar to me, where they are looking for a budget-friendly option, a full frame camera that shoots great photos and great videos. And to me, I think that camera is the Sony A7 III. It may be a few years old now, but it's still a fantastic full frame camera. I think the one thing that a lot of people kind of neglect is the fact that the lenses actually matter way more than the camera bodies. You can pick up a new camera body if you want to get the latest and greatest, but lenses hold their value for a long time, especially if you invest in high quality lenses. Now, I guarantee you that if you get a lens like this is a, drop the cap. This is the Sony 70-200 G Master lens. I guarantee you that in 5 years from now, if you were to sell this lens and you were to sell the Sony A7R IV, then the value on the A7R IV would be significantly less, and the value of the 70-200 would be pretty much the same. And with that said, if you already have a camera body that you are quite happy with, then I would just focus more on investing in high quality lenses. All right, gotta go return this camera back, but thank you guys so much for watching. I totally appreciate every single one of you for supporting me and this channel all these years. And yeah, I love making these videos for you guys, and I'd appreciate a thumbs up if you like. Thumbs down if you don't like this video, that's okay, totally cool. Subscribe if you haven't, hit the bell notifications so that you get notified of upcoming videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.